Well, this is Dateline News and Conversation, and I'm Regis Tremblay, and this is not a fake AI video, I guarantee you. The topic tonight, it's going to be all about Canada. One of my favorite people. He's a long-time, very experienced journalist, a newsman in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Rick Walker. Rick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me today, Regis. My privilege.
Oh, it's always my pleasure. You know, I've said on this show before, when you and I have done several shows, that I spent 4 years of college in Niagara Falls, Canada. I fell in love with the Niagara Falls Flyers. I fell in love with the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, and I loved Canada. And I mentioned this to you before, but my history teacher, it was back in probably 1966 or 67, he said, and I'll never forget it, that Canada was going to be the country of the 21st century. And the reasons why was because the enormous landmass that Canada makes up, the amount of natural resources, and basically a free and democratic country. Now, Rick, I've got a lot to talk about with you tonight because, Canada's not in the news very much right now. Everybody is waiting for some kind of a nuclear exchange in the Middle East. If Israel and Trump attack Iran, all hell's going to break loose. Trump comes out and says, I'm tightening the embargo on Cuba. We're going to strangle them. We're going to get rid of the regime, and we're going to take over. Now, if that's not enough, what's happening in the United States today, Rick, right below your southern border in Minneapolis, where I have friends, classmates, I can't recognize what's happened to my country. I look at what Trump is doing and what these ICE thugs are doing, not only in Minneapolis, but in other cities, major cities. By the way, they're all blue Democrat. Trump is a fascist dictator. Mm-hmm. Now, if that's not enough, I want to talk about Canada tonight because I love Canada. My ancestors, my grandparents came from Quebec. And so I'm French Canadian. And I hate to see what's happening to Canada, or what looks like what might be happening to Canada. Rick, I want to start first with what the heck is going on out there in Alberta. Emphasizing their sovereignty, talking about breaking away from Canada. And my God, if Donald Trump's administration is not there talking to the people, the separatists in Vancouver. I read today White House officials are in Vancouver. Rick, help me understand what the heck is going on. I remember when Quebec wanted to secede. And thank God they didn't. But help me and my viewers understand what is going on out there in Alberta.
Oh, I lost you there, Regis.
No, I'm here. You're full screen.
Okay, I see. It comes down to one word: oil. Alberta is an oil-rich province of Canada. It has one of the largest oil reserves in the world. Maybe second only to Venezuela. The oil there is a very heavy kind of oil, but still very valuable. And Trump wants it. I think it is really just that simple. As a result, I've seen for, quite a number of years, it became very clear, certainly around the time of the pandemic, that Canada was in play. I've been saying that for a long time. It took quite a while for me to figure out who it is that really wants our country, because it was all very shadowy. But Trump eventually has come right out and said it. He wants to make Canada the 51st state. As a result, they are actually having discussions with separatists in Alberta. And these separatists, who are part of this thing called the Alberta Prosperity Project and other related organizations and groups, they're not elected. They're political activist groups, and they have been down to the United States to meet with people from the State Department. They've spoken about this openly. They have acknowledged that the Trump administration has offered them $500 million as some sort of loan in order to finance this separatist movement, and it is absolutely gaining momentum. But you have U.S. fingerprints all over this, and just yesterday, for the very first time, we saw prominent politicians led by the Premier of British Columbia during an all premiers meeting with the Prime Minister yesterday in Ottawa, come out and say what they've always been afraid to say, because we live right next door to this giant entity that I call Godzilla, this metaphor for the United States. And they're using the word treason. They're saying that these separatists out in Alberta have been committing acts of treason by going down and negotiating the breakup of Canada with U.S. officials. The thing is, they're doing it in the open. Canada has so much freedom here in a way that we actually allow this kind of activity to take place. It's a very murky line, where that line is drawn between, political activism, free speech, and treason, or doing something that is traitorous. But yesterday, for the first time, we saw politicians in Canada actually use that word. And personally, as a Canadian, this is me editorializing here, I think it's overdue, because what they have been involved with, these separatists, I think that it is honestly treasonous. And I think that the United States, I know that they have been engaged in these kinds of activities that have been targeting Canada, designed to undermine our country in many different ways, using information warfare, fueling protests with shadowy dark money, and just now outright public meetings and displays to support this separatist movement that is really gaining momentum out in Alberta. So it's a very scary time for me and for many Canadians who do want to keep this country together.
Do you think that the government in Ottawa will step in and use some kind of force to put this down?
I'm afraid it might come to that. We generally are a pretty peaceful country. We sometimes have to do things to keep the United States happy, but I know that the government is trying to avoid that. That's why they don't talk about it much. It's really the discussion on that U.S. foreign influence is suppressed largely here, but it's becoming so prominent that it's being forced to the surface. They're being forced essentially to talk about it now, because we could have a referendum here as early as this fall. Will it come to violence?
A referendum, a national referendum?
No, just a referendum out in Alberta.
In Alberta,
these separatists have created a situation where we could have a vote. If right now they're gathering signatures on a petition to affect that, they need about 180,000 signatures in order to trigger a referendum, and that could happen this fall. The problem, though, Regis, is that they're coming out, these separatists now, and they're saying in the end they really don't want to follow the rules, because the referendum itself, based on our Constitution and the laws that we have here, that is not enough. You have to go through a series of steps to actually separate. There's a thing called the Clarity Act, and you have First Nations considerations here, because in Canada, the politics, the structure of the country is such that we have nations within a nation, and you have 5 treaties that were signed, and all of those things have to come into play. So the referendum is really just supposed to trigger negotiations with Ottawa, but the separatists are coming out now and saying, nope, all we need is the will of the people, which is to get a majority of people to vote in favor of separation with this referendum, and international support for Alberta sovereignty. And those meetings down in the States with the State Department have created those conditions, because the State Department, they're saying, the Alberta separatists are saying, the U.S. State Department has indicated if they get a positive vote for separation with the referendum, the Trump administration will recognize Alberta as a sovereign province, at which point, now that the Canadian federal government is at odds with the U.S. government, and then I think we might have a real problem.
You know, has anybody been using the term the right to self-determination? You know, this is what the people in those 5 oblasts that have had referendums to return to Russia, which a lot of countries don't respect. But I'm just wondering if it won't be long before they're going to say the right of self-determination. And, you know, the thing that I have to bring up here is that it is no secret in the United States that there are some, I think it's around 9 or 10 states that want to secede from the United States. California, Texas, Vermont, I don't know. And, you know, they're all claiming we don't like it here, we want to get out.
I shouldn't laugh, because it may be more serious than we think. I think they're on the verge of a civil war in the United States right now. And just 2 days ago, Jesse Ventura, former wrestler and one-term governor of the state of Minnesota, came out and said that Minnesota should just join Canada. And it might seem like a joke, but these days jokes seem to become reality.
Well, and it shows the intensity of the feelings with what's really happening on the ground. It's no longer just, you know, this theoretical, philosophical, ideological conversation. This is real stuff. Let's get out of here is basically what's going on. All right, I want to shift gears. It's not really too off the mark, but your Prime Minister, Mark Carney, gave an incredible talk at Davos a week or so ago. He got a standing ovation. Now, Rick, I was somewhat surprised that you know, all these billionaires that are looking to control the entire planet would have had such a favorable reaction to this. Let's talk a little bit about what Mark Carney said and what he meant. And one of the things I want to put right out there in front of you is when he talked about empire and global powers, let's face it, was he talking about the United States of America? Who else could he have been talking about? So tell me a little bit about your views on this talk, how you see it, how Canadians see it, and what it means for the New World Order.
I think it was a groundbreaking speech and maybe a pivotal moment for Canada. It surprised me as well. Carney is a liberal, but that's a big L brand liberal. I keep telling people that he is more conservative than the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, former Bank of Canada governor, former governor of the Bank of England. He's an economist. Stephen Harper, who is the former prime minister, Conservative prime minister of Canada, when he was prime minister, wanted Carney to be his finance minister. I keep telling people he's not just a typical liberal, and he will surprise you. He's a little unpredictable. So he goes to Davos, he delivers this speech, and he talks about the rules-based international order. But what surprised everyone, myself included, is he talked about the partial falsity, how the rules-based international order has always been partially false, that it's been a system where the big powers like the United States could basically exempt themselves from the rules. And we've seen that time and time again. We're seeing it right now. The United States doesn't has a veto power at the UN. The United States doesn't belong to the International Criminal Court or the ICJ. So when a president is accused of a war crime, they just say, well, the rules don't apply to us. And Mark Carney called that out basically in Davos without actually saying, the name of the president, didn't actually use Donald Trump's name, but everybody knew who he was talking about, because Canada is under intense pressure right now with a massive tariff war, a war on our economy. Donald Trump has, I've been saying he has initiated an undeclared war against Canada, the best friend the United States ever had. We're right next door. We're neighbors, practically siblings, and he's gone to war with us to apply economic pressure using tariffs as a weapon in order to try to bring the country to its knees so that we end up joining the U.S. as a 51st state. And Carney, I think, has just had enough, just like the current acting president of the real acting president of Venezuela, not Donald Trump, who has self-declared himself to be the acting president of Venezuela. The real acting president of Venezuela has said, we've had enough of these orders from the Trump administration. Well, I think Mark Carney has had enough too. And even though people say he's a globalist, and he's, certainly associated with them because of his jobs, I think right now he is looking out for the interests of Canada, because he sees that essentially Trump wants to swallow us up, just like he's been, the U.S. has been swallowing up so many other countries. So he's taken a stand, and he's saying to all the other middle powers, the smaller countries around the world, there is still an alternative. We can work together, and we can protect our interests if we unify and stand against this fascist movement that is present in the United States right now.
Donald Trump was obviously pissed off at Carney's speech. I'm sure he didn't listen to it. Somebody probably had to, because he doesn't have the patience to read anything. I think he might be really basically illiterate. I'm not sure how competent he is to read and to understand something that's written, especially something complicated. But
Carney's speech was so deep. I mean, he's quoting
exactly
philosophers. This is going right over Donald Trump's head. Somebody's going to have to explain it to him. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it did have an effect on Trump. Somebody told him what the bottom line was. Bottom line was, Carney doesn't like you. Carney is saying all these things bad about the United States and the rules-based order. Yeah. And then, so what does Carney do next? Carney goes to China.
I know. Yeah,
listen,
just to throw a little salt.
Donald Trump has been threatening everybody with massive tariffs. If they go to China, they help China with oil. They make deals with China. Rick, tell me, Carney's got some cojones.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, you did what? And so he goes over, and I'm like, right on. Good job. That's me, though, right? Because see, he fixed a big problem that was actually caused by the United States, a big problem that Canada had. Under the United States imposed this 100% tariff on electric vehicles. And because Canada's auto industry has historically, from the very beginning, been integrated with the U.S. auto industry, Canada said, well, if you're doing that, I guess we'll have to do it too, because there was pressure from the U.S. administration. Well, when Canada imposed the 100% tariff on EVs, China retaliated against Canada and imposed an 85% tariff on canola coming from Western Canada. And that devastating for Western Canadian farmers. Then all the pro-Trump influencers out here, many of whom I'm quite certain are being paid, start to go online and attack the Canadian government, saying that we're incompetent. Our government is incompetent. Look what they've done. They've pissed off the Chinese. What are you going to do to fix that? It's all caused by the United States to begin with. Well, now Trump comes along and says, okay, I'm imposing these tariffs on Canada, on the auto industry, because I want all your auto plants, all your Canadian auto plants, to move to the United States. And we've been trying to maneuver through that. And we have just today, actually, another 1,000 workers being laid off at a General Motors plant here in Ontario, in Oshawa. This is a big problem. So Carney, again, he's just thrown up his hands and he said, well, we're just going to do what we can do. We're going to try to control what we can control. So off he goes to China. He cuts a deal with the Chinese. And what he does, he's done exactly what needed to be done. He did his job. He said, we'll open up our market. You can ship 49,000 low cost, high quality electric vehicles into the Canadian auto market. That's really only a fraction of the 2 million approximately that are vehicles that are sold in Canada every year. But he opens up the market enough to let in 49,000. And in exchange, the Chinese cut the tariff from 85% on canola down to, I think it's 15%. So basically, he saved the butts of all those Western Canada canola farmers. Well, then all the pro-Trump influencers chime in now. They were bitching and complaining because the Canadian government had this, tariff from China imposed on the canola farmers. He gets it taken off. Now all the pro-Trumpsters are complaining and saying, well, what have you done? You've made a deal with China. That's going to be a disaster. And Trump is, making these comments too. He retaliates and says, you can't make those pro-Trumpster influencers here happy, right? You're damned if you do and damned if you do. Trump then chimes in and says, well, if you're doing a deal with China, it's going to be 100% tariff on everything coming into the United States from Canada. And Carney has just kind of taken it in stride and he's just kind of sloughed it off. And he's playing it. He's throwing everything back at Trump that Trump is throwing at Canada. He's playing word games right back because in reality, Trump is saying that they're violating, or it's not even that they're violating. He just doesn't like it. So he's making up new rules. Under the Canada-US Mexico free trade agreement that we have in place right now, Canada is prohibited from entering into overall free trade agreements with what are described as non-market economies, China being one of them, because it's deemed to be a country that has a lot of government control and central planning. It really is because the United States is afraid of the competition. So we're not allowed to do a broad, comprehensive free trade deal with China. So Trump freaks out, but Carney comes back and says, well, we have a trade deal with China. But what people are not picking up on, and what the pro-Trump influencers are doing, is they're saying, oh, he's admitted that he's done a free trade deal with China. No, he didn't. He did a carve out and he solved a problem. He just addressed a sectoral trade problem caused by the United States. He dealt with the tariffs imposed by the Chinese on Canada by lifting the tariffs on the EVs coming from China into Canada. It's not a violation of the Canada-US-Mexico free trade agreement at all, because it's just dealing with one particular sector. But people aren't picking up on the nuance, and Trump freaked out and in a knee-jerk reaction actually said something that would be in violation of the current Canada-US-Mexico free trade agreement, because it would be a total violation to impose 100% tariff on everything. We have a free trade deal that prohibits that. It's insane. It's insane. So Carney knows exactly what he's doing. He's very intelligent. He did this deal. It's in compliance with the current free trade deal here, but people not looking at the details, and they're just ripping them anyway. I keep saying, let's not just throw the guy away because he wears an L on his lapel. Let's judge him by his actions and see how he does. Let him do his job. I personally think he's doing okay so far. He's doing what he needs to do, and he's standing up to Godzilla. So more power to him as far as I'm concerned.
And I agree with you. I agree with anybody that stands up to Godzilla. Now, a couple of quick points. I think without a doubt that an enormous amount of money, whether it's coming from the CIA, which is involved in doing this kind of crap for 80 years, pouring money to create dissent, to create unrest. They've done it so many times. I mean, you have to have several pages to see how many countries they've done this in. And they're doing it. They just tried doing it in Iran, and it basically is blown up in their face. But they did it in Venezuela. I'm sure they're doing it in your country. There is no doubt about it that they're pouring probably billions of dollars in to organize and to create unrest. The other thing, Rick, that I think is really kind of interesting, Carney goes to China. Guess who else just went to China? Starmer from the UK.
Starmer. Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? Others in the EU are going to be having these little private visits. They're going to be going to China, and President Xi is going to welcome them. They're going to have a photo op. They're going to shake hands. These photo ops are really powerful. You don't have to know what the deal is. You just have to see, the UK, which we know is really in deep doo-doo right now economically. They are having a really tough time with all of these austerity measures. Businesses have closed, pubs have closed, lots of people are unemployed, inflation is out of sight. England is a mess. And you have Starmer that goes over there. Who knows what kind of deal? And maybe it wasn't even a deal. Maybe it was just kind of like, are you guys willing to talk? Can we do something? Because I got some buddies over here in the EU, and UK is not part of the EU. I mean, I think, Rick, to me, I think the ground is no longer stable. The ground is really getting kind of shaky because of what America is doing all over the place. I want your comment now. I know you've been following this. People have been talking about the economy south of the border for a long time. They've been predicting that it's not sustainable. It's going to collapse. But the national debt is now, I just read today, $39 trillion. It goes up $1 trillion every 100 days. The household debt, American household debt, is at $18 trillion. Now, I don't understand economy. I do understand that the United States the Fed will keep printing dollars, but it's only good insofar as the dollar is still being used around the world. But everything I've been reading in just the last week, Rick, is the dollar is tanking. It's at its lowest in I don't know how many years. And what is happening simultaneously, maybe to drive that down, is the incredible rise in gold and silver. Gold off the charts, silver off the charts. An indication that people don't trust the dollar anymore. Russia, from what I understand, is completely divested of its United States Treasury bonds. Doesn't hold any of them anymore. China, I heard, is getting rid of them. If not completely, they're in the process of getting rid of them. Rick, as a Canadian, when you sit there north of the border, and your economy is really heavily dependent on the United States, Mexico, and really the rest of the world, how do you interpret what I just said about the dollar, the US debt, and people? Now, I say people, I mean countries, Russia, China, India, African countries, the global south, buying and stockpiling precious metals. How do you interpret that from where you sit in Ottawa?
The United States is in big trouble. Just this week, a couple of days ago, the Bank of Canada set its interest rate. They kept it low. 2.25%, I think, was the rate that was set. That's substantially lower than the US rate. And when talking about this and having his news conference, the governor of the Bank of Canada came out and said that, confidence in the U.S. is waning. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember the exact quote, but he did indicate that confidence in the United States and the U.S. dollar is on shaky ground. And this, again, is a pivotal moment for Canada. So Canada is using monetary policy as just one of the tools to try to insulate itself against this war on our economy from the United States. And all of this is being done, in my view, by the United States, by Trump, because the U.S. is in trouble. They're so far in debt, they need to find some way to pay off what they owe, or to at least sustain it. And the only way they can do that is to go around and steal oil from other countries. If you look at what they're doing, every country they're targeting right now is an oil-rich nation. So you have Venezuela, you have Iran, you have Canada, all oil-rich nations. And this is because, in the 1970s, oil production basically peaked and began to decline dramatically because the oil wells were essentially running dry. And then they discovered fracking. And then in the early 2000s, fracking rejuvenated the American oil industry. It's oil, sale of oil, that really backs up the U.S. dollar. And that's been the case since 71, after Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So oil is what has been propping up the value of the dollar. And that's why they call it the petrodollar. Saudi Arabia made an agreement for self-defense, and in exchange, they have always required that their oil be purchased in U.S. dollars to create demand for the U.S. dollar. But now, with the BRICS nations and de-dollarization happening, and because Trump is using these tariffs as a weapon against his allies, confidence in the United States, confidence in the dollar has been decimated. And so it's falling apart. That's why he needs the oil. That's why he's going after these countries. And the other reason he's doing it is because the United States, even with fracking now, we know that oil production in the United States, which is at about 13.5 billion barrels per day, has peaked. It's going to begin to drop again. They only have, another 10 years and they're back to where they were around 1970. So they're scrambling to try to find some way to extract wealth from other countries to pay for the debt that they've accumulated, because they haven't been paying their bills, and they have politicians that have been very careless and have been overspending. It really is just that simple.
Yeah. You talk about the BRICS. Mm-hmm. There's not enough talk about the BRICS, in my opinion, led by Russia and China. India now coming out very strong, not paying any attention to Donald Trump's threats on tariffs on them, buying oil from Russia. China not paying any attention to that. The BRICS movement is strengthening. And I've read recently where China has been developing its own version of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Mm-hmm. And if China wanted, they could roll that out tonight and completely collapse the entire U.S. and Western economy. Have you seen any of that? Do you think any of that is real? I personally think it's very real. I think they know what's coming. I think China, being now the economic and industrial and manufacturing superpower, they have no competition. The United States is no competition anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think China realizes that the American market of 320 million people is too large to allow the US economy to crash. I think what Russia and China and India and the rest of the BRICS are hoping for is a soft landing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think China is set to lead where the United States is pulling back. This America First agenda policy that Trump is using or has embraced is contractionary. It's pulling the United States back into itself. And yes, if you have China now going to countries around the world saying, hey, we'll loan you money for infrastructure projects and we'll give you favorable rates and we'll work with you, that is soft power. And it's very effective. You can assert your influence around the world and get better deals for everything and work with other countries in very effective and profitable ways by use of economic tools, loans, and other financial incentives and subsidies, even to help countries get up on their feet. Smaller countries, and then in exchange you have access to their rare earth minerals or their oil without having to drop bombs on them, right? And the United States, like Trump, is abandoning those kinds of efforts with the budget cuts and the efforts that they've made around the world. He's just pulled back from all of that. He's America first, because he's just not thinking it through. Instead of trying to work with other countries, he's just decided to go around and just take from other countries.
Yeah.
And it's backfiring on the United States. It's damaging the country. And I don't know if they'll ever recover from this.
I agree with you. And, I've been living here in Russia for 6 years now, and the sanctions, there's almost 3,000 sanctions that the United States alone has placed on Russia. It has had hardly any effect.
Yeah.
What's happened is Russian agriculture is booming. We've taken train rides in the last 2 or 3 years to Moscow and to other cities, and all it is farmland, wheat, grain, barley, whatever else they're growing. Russia is completely self-sustaining when it comes to food. And because of the sanctions and a lot of industries left here, Russians came in, bought those industries, and have learned how to produce everything from cheese to bread to anything that they were buying from France or Italy or anywhere else.
Yeah.
And, I hear these stories, from the United States and some of my friends that said, gee, the economy is really bad and Russians are having a hard time feeding themselves. Rick, I've been going around with my camera and taking pictures and video inside our supermarkets. We have outdoor markets here in Yalta in 2 or 3 locations, all fresh fruit and vegetables directly from the farm, not coming from somewhere else. It's all we buy. Rick, there's nothing that I personally need or want that I used to get from the United States that I can't find right here in Russia. And I can get it locally, or I can get it from Russia's version of Amazon, which there's a couple of them here, Wild Berries and Ozone. The economy is doing really well. Inflation is the lowest it's been in a long time. Unemployment is negligible. There's so much construction happening here everywhere. In Yalta, where I live, all around Crimea, you go to the larger cities, and we go by train, and as we pass these larger cities, cranes are everywhere. New construction happening everywhere. And so if you're somebody in Russia that says, I can't find a job, I don't know what's wrong with you, because jobs are abundant. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point about sanctions and the effect that they've had on Russia and the Russian economy. I want to shift gears now, and I'm really hoping that your Prime Minister Mark Carney will be able to stand up to whatever Trump throws at your country. And I really hope that others will be emboldened, not only by his speech at Davos, but by what he did by going to China. Now, looking at the geopolitical situation, we started off the year 2026 with Trump kidnapping the president of Venezuela, Maduro, and his wife. I've heard nothing about what's happened to them. They're in a jail somewhere awaiting trial. Trump now, as you were mentioning, if he doesn't like a country or he needs something from you, he's going to take it over. Mm-hmm. He has amassed the largest naval armada in history in the Middle East, around the Persian Gulf. And at the same time, he's threatening to strangle Cuba and to take it over. Let's first talk about Iran. Rick, I don't know how you view it sitting there in Ottawa, but you're an established newsman, journalist. You're not just focusing on your country, you're focusing on geopolitical events that are happening all over the world. I don't know about you, but I am very, very worried that what Trump is provoking in the Persian Gulf, threatening Iran, and Iran saying, if you strike us, no matter how small or large, we are going to reply with everything we have left. A message to Israel and to that enormous armada, as well as thousands and thousands of U.S. soldiers in bases surrounding Iran. Rick, do you think Trump is bluffing, or do you think something's going to happen this weekend?
I don't think he wants to use force. I think he's hoping the threat will be enough. But so in that way, I think he is bluffing, but he's backing himself into a corner again. And if the bluff is called in order to save face, he might pull the trigger. So I'm very worried about that. What I'm seeing happen over there also shows me that he's just been lying again, because he claimed that, through Operation Midnight Hammer, they had destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. And I apologize for the barking of my dog.
No problem.
Somebody came to the door, but it's okay. Somebody's taking care of it. He said that the nuclear program for Iran had been completely destroyed. Operation Midnight Hammer, right? Well, then why is he going back? He's saying that they want to come to the table and talk about nuclear weapons again. They don't want Iran to have a nuke. Well, I thought you destroyed the program. Well, obviously you didn't destroy the program. So he lied. And now he's doing this. So it's a mess. And it just proves that he lies. He lies all the time. He lies like a rug. He lies every day. If he's opening his mouth, he's lying.
You're right. He's it's unbelievable how he can lie. And these people around him with a straight face, they can just look you straight in the eye and lie. But
he makes up numbers on the economy. He makes up numbers on everything. And I don't know what to believe with regard to Iran from, with what he's saying there. I'm not in Iran, so I'm not seeing what's going on with those protests, but I've been around long enough to know that what's going on there isn't entirely organic. Those protests, this is being
Oh,
fueled by
oh,
U.S. CIA
oh,
driven
CIA,
propaganda, right?
CIA, MI6. Give
Yeah.
me a break.
Of course it is. It's happening in my country right now.
Yeah,
I'm seeing it firsthand. I understand exactly how it works now because it's like it's happening to me, and
yeah.
it's not good.
So here's my take on Iran. You mentioned before, with the United States, it's about oil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is about oil, obviously, in the Middle East, because there's an awful lot of it there. But the other part of it is, I think that Israel has been putting enormous amount of pressure on Trump because Iran is the only country that stands between Israel and its vision for a greater Israel, an expansion of Israel. And so I think it's not just about securing oil, but I think it's about uh, giving in to Netanyahu and crippling Iran, which, as I said, is the only country strong enough to threaten Israel in its vision, as well as the other Arab countries. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Netanyahu is a hawk for sure, and I said after October 7th, the attack, that Israel shouldn't do what Netanyahu did. And I said that was a trap, or at least the wrong thing to do. And I think that's proven out. And then you see what's happened in Gaza, and I'm not in favor of that. I was appalled by the October 7th attack, and I'm appalled by the response from Israel. I'm appalled by all of the violence, and violence begets more violence, and that's what we're getting. But what Trump is doing is actually disgusting because he wants to profit from it all. And while he says he's the president of peace, I think he's more the president of profit. And he's putting together this board of peace to do what? To turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. And like, that's a real plan. I can't believe he's actually doing it. And now he's got this board of peace. And for a lifetime membership, he's charging $1 billion for membership.
$1
$1 billion. What is that? This is crazy. And
that's going into his pockets. Where else is that money going? I read something, Rick, that in his first year in office, his family has benefited by more than $1 billion of monies that he has raised and others have paid into for influence, for access.
Oh my God! The corruption, the grift, it's unbelievable. His Trump meme coin alone, that was a pump and dump that that his family profited to the tune of $1 billion. They they put that out as an initial public offering. It went up in value and then it tanked. So they took in all this money. People bought this digital make-believe currency, the Trump meme coin, and then when they saw it, then they turned around and sold it all off, took the cash, took the money and ran right back to the Oval Office. Well, the people who bought it lost 95% of their investment. And people are like, yay, Trump. I don't get it, man. Like, that's not good for the people. He's not a president of the people. He's once again a president of profit for himself.
Yeah. And there's two things here. You just mentioned Jared Kushner and the Steve Witkoff.
Yeah.
The plans that they have for developing a Riviera on the bones of Palestinians is so immoral, so disgusting, so repulsive. I can't believe it, but they're serious about it. And I just read where Kushner, I think it was Kushner, said, we've already begun cleaning away some of the rubble. Now, there's another part of this. Trump is really an ignorant person. He's a real estate guy, and he understands property and land. I don't think he had a clue where Crimea was. And yet, when somebody showed him a map of Crimea, he said, oh, wow, that's wonderful. They're surrounded by 4 oceans. And he said, it's such a warm, temperate climate. You know what's going on in the back of that guy's freaking head? It's like another Riviera. I'm living in Yalta. Yalta is by far probably the most attractive resort town in all of Crimea. It's such a beautiful place along the Black Sea, and you know what? We have some really world-class resorts. We don't have a golf course. And I can see Trump when he looked at that map of Crimea and he looked at the coast, and somebody showed him some photographs of some video of Yalta and the Black Sea and all the land that's available here that's being bought up by billionaires from Siberia who got a lot of oil. He's thinking, oh, we can have a Mar-a-Lago in Crimea. We could have a Trump casino. We could have a Trump tower. And my gosh, we could have an 18-hole championship golf course just south of Yalta. Rick, it is so blatant.
It is blatant. It after kidnapping Maduro, he then has a meeting with all of the U.S. oil industry executives to decide who gets to go in there and take the oil. Which oil companies are going to be favored by Mr. Trump today? Well, he didn't like what the guy from Exxon said, so he's probably not going to get a deal. The other ones, I think, are all going in. There's that. And then, this all started for me in a way with the Gulf of Mexico when he renamed it. And I refuse to call it what he calls it. I've been saying from the beginning, it is not that. It is the Gulf of Mexico. And I've been telling, our viewers on our channel, the way you resist, okay, is just these small things. Just refuse to call it what he wants you to call it. Call it what it really is. It's the Gulf of Mexico. And then he turns around just in the last couple of weeks and he puts up a map of North America, and over Canada and Greenland, he has a U.S. flag.
A U.S. flag.
I'm like, I refuse to acknowledge that. That is BS. That's not what it is. It's Canada, and that's Greenland, and that's the Gulf of Mexico. You don't get to decide what's on the map. You don't arbitrarily get to just redraw the map. I refuse to bend the knee to that, because it all starts right there by reframing your perception of reality and normalizing these ideas and these things that he wants to happen. And unfortunately, people buy into it. And the next thing you've got NATO troops stationed in Greenland in defense of Greenland because they're afraid Trump's actually come. Like, it's insane. I don't know what else to say, man. It's crazy.
Well, you talk about resistance. We're seeing it right now south of the border, not too far from where you are in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's not only happening there, it happened in Portland, it's happened in Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia. And I watched this song by Bruce Springsteen, which has gone viral. It's called The Streets of Minneapolis. Rick, on the one hand, I cried, but it was a music video. When I saw the videos and the pictures of the response of the people from Minneapolis, from their governor, from their mayor, I think people now realize that the chickens have come home to roost. What America has been doing all around the world with violence, with killing of people, is now on full view. Certainly in Minneapolis, it was in view in Portland, in Los Angeles. And Rick, I can only hope the American people have not risen up against what we've been talking about tonight. Okay, what Trump has done in the last year, they have not come out into the streets. They have not come out to reclaim their country, which Trump is in the process of destroying. But in Minneapolis, Rick, I wonder what your thoughts are as a Canadian. Do you have some hope that this will wake up the rest of the country to what their country really is? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I hope it does. I wish it would, but I'm not convinced it will. That's because of what I'm seeing online. I'm seeing this narrative spin, political rhetoric, lying, social media push designed to make people question what they're actually seeing. I saw what happened to Alex Preddy, how he was shot 10 times by an ICE officer. He was gunned down. There was no justification, period, for use of lethal force. It's just plain as day. You can see it from multiple angles. But the pro-Trump media weighs in. They launch this campaign. You see his minions in the Trump administration instantly begin to call the victim a domestic terrorist. It's gross, it's disgusting, and unfortunately, so many people are like, well, yeah, because look, he was actually a paid agitator. Even it doesn't even matter if he was a political activist. You have the right to protest. Even in Minneapolis, he had the right to carry a gun, but he never drew the gun. He never held the gun. He never pointed the gun at anybody. It was never taken out of the holster. He was disarmed by an ICE officer. Then he was shot. This is cut and dried. The officers did not have justification to use lethal force. And yet so many people out there are making excuses just because their minds are twisted by whatever magical formula they have online to affect this strange outcome, this disconnect from reality that people are going through. There's something really powerful and dangerous going on with social media and this information war that Trump is perpetrating on his own people. He is now at war with his own people.
Yeah, I agree. And with the woman that was shot 3 times in the head, Renee Good, I watched that over and over again, and there's no doubt that she was trying to get away from this guy, and took 3 shots to the head. And do you know what I read? And I read this on Russian television, RT, Russian news channel. And the article, I think, was quoting something from the United States. Do you know what it said? It said that she was a domestic terrorist. She was a paid, whatever it was, insurrectionist. And they used the word lesbian. And she had partners, along with she's got 3 kids. Yeah. This is the dirt. This is the filth. This is how low they go with using media, the real media, and social media to basically distort people. And it's so hard today, Rick, to know what's real and what's not fake, which is why I introduced the show today. This is Regis Tremblay, and I'm real. I'm not some AI fake creation, because it's all over the place. And so you just don't know anymore, Rick, what is real and what is fake. Rick, I can't thank you enough. It is always a pleasure, always energetic and exciting, I would say, to have these conversations with you. Thanks so much for coming on the show and doing this live.
My privilege again, and thanks for keeping it real.